For decades, American companies viewed China as the ultimate prize, a vast market ripe for investment and expansion. This perception was rooted in the belief that engaging with China would lead to substantial profits and an influx of resources. However, prominent commentator Lingling Wei argues that American firms fundamentally misunderstood the nature of this engagement. While they believed they were merely hiring a contractor to fulfill business needs, China recognized the interaction as an apprenticeship, a strategic opportunity to learn, adapt, and enhance its own industrial capabilities. Historical context. The relationship between American companies and China has evolved significantly since the late 20th century. In the 1980s and 1990s, as China began to open its markets, American businesses rushed in, drawn by the promise of cheap labor, a burgeoning consumer base, and the potential for high returns on investment. This initial phase of engagement was characterized by a transactional mindset. American firms often prioritized short-term gains over long-term strategy, leading to a significant economic interdependence. As American companies set up operations in China, they brought with them advanced technologies, management practices, and business models. In their view, they were establishing a mutually beneficial relationship, believing that their investments would secure market access and profitability. However, this approach overlooked a critical aspect of China's strategy. The Chinese government and its industries were not merely passive recipients of foreign investment. Instead, they sought to absorb knowledge and technology from these engagements to bolster their own capabilities. The misunderstanding. Lingling Wei articulates that the fundamental misunderstanding lies in the differing perceptions of the relationship. American companies were focused on hiring Chinese firms as contractors to produce goods at lower costs, often neglecting the implications of sharing proprietary technologies and expertise. In contrast, the Chinese government viewed these foreign partnerships as a means to facilitate an apprenticeship model where learning from foreign entities would enable the development of a robust domestic industry. This paradigm created a significant imbalance in expectations. American companies assumed that they would maintain competitive advantages through their innovations, while China systematically worked to close the technological gap. Over the years, this led to concerns about intellectual property theft and the forced transfer of technology as a prerequisite for market entry in China. Reactions and reflections. As this dynamic unfolded, voices within the U.S. began to question the sustainability of such a relationship. Relat, a commentator, raised an important question. What's less clear now that the U.S. is this far down this road is whether it's too late to renegotiate, redirect, or reformulate? This sentiment reflects a growing awareness that the initial assumptions about the relationship may need to be reassessed in light of China's rapid advancements and strategic planning. Many analysts argue that this misjudgment has far-reaching implications beyond individual businesses. It has led to a broader national conversation about economic security, technological independence, and the need for a coherent strategy in dealing with China. As the geopolitical landscape shifts, American policymakers and businesses are increasingly called to reevaluate how they engage with China, moving from a transactional mindset to a more strategic and informed approach. The current landscape. Today, the U.S.-China relationship stands at a critical juncture. The economic interdependence forged over decades has been tested by rising tensions, trade disputes, and concerns over national security. The COVID-19 pandemic further exacerbated these tensions, highlighting vulnerabilities in global supply chains and prompting a reassessment of reliance on Chinese manufacturing. American companies are now faced with the challenge of navigating a complex regulatory environment and the increasing demand for ethical business practices. Many are reconsidering their strategies, seeking ways to balance profitability with a commitment to protecting intellectual property and ensuring that their engagements do not contribute to an adversarial relationship. Future considerations. Looking ahead, the path for American companies engaging with China will require a nuanced understanding of the evolving dynamics. Companies must recognize that the apprenticeship model acknowledged by Lingling Wei is still in play, and they need to approach collaborations with a greater awareness of the potential long-term implications. This recalibration will involve fostering innovation domestically, securing supply chains, and advocating for fair practices that protect intellectual property rights. Additionally, there is an urgent need for dialogue between business leaders and policymakers to create a cohesive strategy for engagement that recognizes the complexities of the US-China relationship. Conclusion: the narrative surrounding American companies' engagement with China serves as a critical lesson in understanding international business relationships. The historical misjudgment of viewing China solely as a contractor rather than a strategic partner with its own ambitions has led to significant challenges. As the global landscape continues to evolve, it is imperative for American businesses and policymakers to recalibrate their approaches, ensuring that future interactions with China are grounded in a deeper understanding of mutual goals and long-term implications. The stakes are high, and the need for a strategic, informed engagement has never been more pressing. The content presents a counterintuitive insight regarding the relationship between American companies and China. It posits that while American firms perceived their engagement with China as a straightforward business transaction, essentially hiring a contractor to fulfill specific needs, China viewed the same interaction as a strategic apprenticeship aimed at learning and technological advancement. This fundamental misunderstanding of intentions has significant implications for both parties. 1. Misunderstanding intentions. American companies tended to focus on short-term gains and immediate business objectives, believing they were entering into a transactional relationship where they could leverage China's vast market. However, China had a broader strategic goal in mind: to absorb knowledge, technology, and expertise from these engagements to strengthen its own industrial base. 2. Long-term strategy versus short-term gains. The American perspective was largely transactional, emphasizing immediate profits and market access. In contrast, China's approach was more long-term and strategic, seeking to utilize the knowledge gained from foreign companies to boost its own technological capabilities and economic independence. 3. Implications for economic security. This misalignment in understanding has ramifications for economic security and technological independence in both nations. As American firms inadvertently contributed to China's rise as a global economic powerhouse, they also risked undermining their own competitive edge. 4. Call for reassessment. The discussions underscore the urgency for American businesses and policymakers to reevaluate their strategies concerning China. There is a growing recognition that a more nuanced understanding of the relationship is necessary to navigate the complexities of US-China interactions effectively. 5. Historical context. The relationship has evolved since the 1980s and 1990s, when the initial engagements began, leading to significant economic interdependence. However, the current climate calls for a reevaluation of those past dealings. Considering the technological and geopolitical shifts that have occurred, overall, the counterintuitive aspect lies in the realization that what American companies thought was a simple contractor-client relationship was in reality a much deeper and strategic apprenticeship from the Chinese perspective, highlighting a significant gap in understanding that has influenced the trajectory of US-China relations. The discussion surrounding American companies' engagement with China over the past several decades presents critical insights that many may overlook. Lingling Wei's assertion that American firms believed they were simply hiring contractors while China viewed the relationship as an apprenticeship encapsulates a fundamental misunderstanding that has shaped US-China relations. This misjudgment is significant for several reasons that extend beyond mere economic transactions. 1. Misunderstanding of strategic intentions. American companies often approach China with a transactional mindset, focusing on short-term financial gains and immediate market access. This perspective led them to undervalue the strategic intentions of the Chinese government, which saw foreign investment not merely as a business opportunity but as a means to acquire technology expertise and industry knowledge. This misunderstanding underscores a broader theme in international relations: the importance of recognizing and respecting the strategic goals of other nations. The implications are profound as they affect everything from trade negotiations to national security policies. 2. Technological and industrial implications. The ramifications of this misperception extend into the realm of technology and industrial capabilities. By engaging with China without fully understanding its ambitions, American companies effectively contributed to the acceleration of China's technological advancement. This is significant because it not only reshaped global supply chains but also altered the competitive landscape, leading to concerns about technological dependence and economic security in the U.S. Critics argue that this dynamic has left American industries vulnerable as they now face a formidable competitor that has harnessed the very technologies and expertise they shared. 3. Long-term economic strategy versus short-term gains. The contrasting approaches, American firms seeking immediate profits versus China's long-term industrial strategy, highlight a critical lesson in economic engagement. This divergence raises questions about sustainability and the risks associated with prioritizing short-term financial benefits over long-term strategic planning. Many commentators emphasize the need for American businesses to reassess their approach, considering how their engagements can be structured to not only benefit their immediate objectives but also align with broader economic and geopolitical realities. 4. Impacts on national policy and security. The implications of this misunderstanding are not limited to the private sector, they extend to national policy. The U.S. government's response to the evolving relationship with China has been reactive rather than proactive, often lagging behind the realities of the situation. As American firms engaged with China, the government has grappled with issues of economic security, intellectual property theft, and unfair trade practices. This disconnect between corporate strategies and national policy can lead to inadequate responses to emerging threats, making it imperative for policymakers to develop a more cohesive strategy that considers the lessons learned from past engagements. 5. The need for a nuanced understanding moving forward. As various commentators have suggested, the time has come for a reassessment of U.S.-China relations. Ray Suarez's query regarding whether it is too late to renegotiate and reformulate approaches encapsulates this urgency. It is crucial for American companies and policymakers to cultivate a nuanced understanding of mutual goals and long-term implications of their engagements with China. The complexities of these relationships necessitate a strategic framework that goes beyond simple transactional interactions. 6. Cultural and philosophical differences. Finally, the underlying cultural and philosophical differences between American and Chinese approaches to business and governance cannot be overlooked. American companies often operate under a model that prioritizes individualism and short-term achievements, whereas Chinese strategy tends to emphasize collective progress and long-term planning. Recognizing these differences is significant because it can inform more effective strategies for collaboration and competition. Bridging these cultural divides requires not only economic considerations but also an understanding of the values that drive decision-making in both contexts. Conclusion. In summary, the overlooked aspects of American companies' engagement with China highlight critical lessons about strategic intent, technological implications, the importance of long-term planning, and the need for a cohesive national policy. As the dynamics of global trade continue to evolve, understanding these nuances will be essential for American firms and policymakers alike. The narrative serves as a cautionary tale about the risks of underestimating the complexities of international relationships and the importance of aligning business strategies with broader geopolitical realities. 1. Misunderstanding the nature of engagement. American companies historically viewed their relationship with China primarily as a transactional one, focusing on immediate profits and market access. However, this perspective failed to recognize the strategic and long-term goals of the Chinese government, which saw these engagements as an opportunity for apprenticeship. This misunderstanding has significant implications for American businesses. as it highlights the need for a more nuanced approach that acknowledges China's aspirations to enhance its own industrial capabilities through foreign partnerships. 2. Strategic long-term planning versus short-term gains. The core of the issue lies in the contrasting approaches of American businesses and the Chinese government. While American firms pursued short-term gains, China engaged in a calculated strategy to acquire technology knowledge and expertise. This difference in mindset not only affected individual business deals but also contributed to broader economic and geopolitical tensions. The analysis calls for a reassessment of how American companies formulate their strategies when interacting with China, emphasizing the importance of aligning with long-term goals rather than short-term interests. 3. Implications for national policy. The misalignment in understanding the relationship has broader implications for U.S. national policy, particularly concerning economic security and technological independence. As American companies continue to navigate their roles in China, policymakers must consider how these engagements affect national interests. This analysis brings to light the importance of formulating policies that protect key industries and technologies, ensuring that the U.S. can maintain its competitive edge amid rising Chinese capabilities. 4. Urgent need for reassessment. The discussions around the U.S.-China business relationship underscore an urgent need for reevaluation. As geopolitical dynamics shift and technological advancements accelerate, American businesses and policymakers must critically reflect on past engagements and consider potential strategies moving forward. Questions about whether it is too late to renegotiate or reformulate relationships with China are central to ongoing discussions, highlighting the necessity of adapting approaches to align with current realities and future aspirations. This reassessment is essential not only for business success but also for maintaining economic and national security. 1. The Opium Wars 1839–1860. The Opium Wars between Britain and China serve as a significant historical case of misunderstandings in international relations and trade dynamics. The British sought to expand their trade by exporting opium to China, which led to widespread addiction and social issues. The Chinese government attempted to curtail the opium trade, resulting in military conflict. The British perceived their actions as a means to open up China for trade, whereas the Chinese viewed it as an infringement on their sovereignty and health. The outcome resulted in treaties that favored British interests and highlighted the severe power imbalance, similar to how American companies may have underestimated China's strategic intentions. 2. The Industrial Revolution and the United States. Late 19th century. During the late 19th century, American industrial companies expanded rapidly, often seeking to emulate European technologies and practices. However, as they brought in foreign expertise and technology, they underestimated the potential for domestic labor and innovation to rapidly catch up. The industrialists believed they were merely enhancing their operational capacity, but the burgeoning American workforce and technological advancements ultimately led to the U.S. establishing itself as a global industrial power. This mirrors the situation with American companies in China, where they believed they were simply outsourcing, not realizing that they were facilitating a local apprenticeship that would lead to significant domestic advancements. 3. The rise of Japan in the late 20th century. After World War II, American companies engaged with Japan, initially viewing it as a market for goods and services. The U.S. was focused on rebuilding Japan's economy and creating a market for American products. However, Japan's government and businesses viewed this engagement as an opportunity to learn and adapt Western technologies, eventually leading to the rise of Japanese companies that could compete on a global scale. American firms underestimated Japan's strategic approach, thinking they were simply exporting products while Japan was using the opportunity to enhance its industrial capabilities. This dynamic resonates with the perception of American companies regarding their relationship with China, where they believed they were simply hiring contractors rather than realizing the long-term apprenticeship that was being established. The future outlook of U.S.-China relations, particularly in the context of business and economic engagement, is poised for significant transformation as we move further into the 2020s. Several key predictions can be made based on the evolving dynamics between these two global powers. 1. Increased economic decoupling. One of the most prominent trends will be the acceleration of economic decoupling. The U.S. has become increasingly concerned about its reliance on Chinese manufacturing and technology, particularly in critical sectors such as semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and rare earth materials. In response, we anticipate a push for reshoring manufacturing back to the U.S. and diversifying supply chains to include allied nations. This decoupling will likely lead to a fragmentation of global supply chains, resulting in higher costs and potential inefficiencies, but also a drive for innovation in domestic manufacturing. 2. Technological rivalry intensifies. The technological competition between the US and China will heat up as both nations seek to establish leadership in key areas like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and biotechnology. The U.S. government is likely to increase investment in R&D and provide incentives for tech companies to innovate domestically. Conversely, China will continue to enhance its capabilities through state-led initiatives, further complicating the tech landscape. This rivalry may lead to the establishment of two distinct technology ecosystems, with companies from each country becoming increasingly isolated from one another. 3. Geopolitical tensions impact business environment. Geopolitical tensions will increasingly influence the business environment. Trade policies, tariffs, and restrictions on foreign investments will become more common as governments prioritize national security over free market principles. Businesses will need to navigate a more complex regulatory landscape where compliance with local laws will be paramount. Companies that adapt to these changes and align their strategies with national interests will likely fare better in the evolving environment. 4. Shift in consumer preferences. As awareness of ethical sourcing and sustainability grows, consumers in both the US and China will demand greater transparency from companies regarding their supply chains. This shift will pressure businesses to adopt more sustainable practices, potentially leading to increased operational costs but also new opportunities for innovation. Companies that successfully integrate sustainability into their business models may find a competitive advantage in attracting consumers who prioritize ethical considerations. 5. Reassessment of strategic alliances. In light of rising tensions, both nations may seek to reinforce their alliances. The U.S. is likely to strengthen its partnerships with like-minded countries in the Indo-Pacific region and beyond, while China will continue to solidify its relationships through initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative. These strategic alliances will shape trade routes, investment flows, and technological collaborations, further redefining the global economic landscape. 6. Emerging markets gain importance. As U.S.-China relations become more strained, American companies may look to emerging markets in Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America as alternative hubs for investment and growth. These regions offer new opportunities for market expansion and resource acquisition, but they also present challenges related to political stability, regulatory environments, and infrastructure development. Businesses that can navigate these complexities will be well positioned for future growth. 7. Labor market shifts. The shifting economic landscape will also have profound implications for labor markets in both countries. In the U.S., there may be a growing demand for skilled workers in technology and manufacturing sectors as companies invest in domestic capabilities. Meanwhile, China might face challenges related to labor costs and an aging population, prompting shifts in its workforce strategies and potentially leading to increased automation. 8. Long-term strategic planning. American companies will need to adopt a more long-term strategic perspective regarding their engagement with China. This will involve a reassessment of risk management practices, investment strategies, and competitive positioning. Companies that understand the nuances of the U.S.-China relationship and can anticipate changes in the geopolitical landscape will be better equipped to thrive. Conclusion. In summary, the future of US-China relations and business engagement will be shaped by economic decoupling, intensified technological rivalry, geopolitical tensions, evolving consumer preferences, and the importance of emerging markets. As the landscape evolves, companies must recalibrate their strategies to align with the shifting dynamics, ensuring they are prepared to navigate the complexities of this critical international relationship. The path forward may be fraught with challenges, but it also presents opportunities for innovation and growth in a rapidly changing world.